Well, welcome. It is a delight to have you here for the first of 12 classes on university level writing. I suppose you're here because you are so excited about the idea, or maybe you're just looking at the gloomy specter of university level writing. But we're going to start today with a short little exercise just to kind of warm us all up. And it's typical of what's called a prompt or essay on demand. Have you ever had to do that? Where someone basically gives you a quote or a little bit of information and then they quickly say, okay, write an essay telling what you think about this. And you have a limited amount of time to wrangle your thoughts into some manageable sequence and then translate them into the best English you can on a very short period of time. It used to be that the SAT and the ACT had this type of essay. They're not doing it so much anymore. And of course, there's lots of changes that always happen. But it's a good initial exercise. So I'm going to have you pull out a piece of paper, and with no help and no instructions, I will let you try this. Okay, let's read a little bit and then we'll set a timer. Assignment, time, 20 minutes. Choose either of the following two essay prompts and write an essay to the best of your ability. 1. Many high schools have required students to pass 2 years of a foreign language class in order to graduate, while many universities have the same as a prerequisite for admission. Some people think that these requirements should continue because people all over the world are becoming more interconnected all the time. Additionally, the study of a foreign language requires a level of academic rigor which provides intellectual benefits for students beyond practical use. Others, however, believe that such study is unnecessary, as many people in the world speak English as a second language, and this is likely to continue. Additionally, we now have voice recognition translation apps, which allow people who speak different languages to communicate using the microphone and speaker in mobile phones. Thus, the study of a foreign language is relatively unneeded in the modern world, and students might use their time to greater advantage. In your opinion, should high school students be required to pass 2 years of a foreign language in order to graduate? In your essay, take a position on this question. You may write about either of the views mentioned, or you may develop another point of view on this issue. Use specific reasons and examples for your position. So that's your first option. If you like, the second. 2. Quote, education has produced a vast population able to read but unable to distinguish what is worth reading. G.M. Trevelyan, 1876 to 1962, English Social History. Is Trevelyan's statement true? Are most people today unable to tell the difference between something that is worth reading and something that isn't? Compose an essay in which you develop your point of view on this question. Support your argument with reasoning and examples from your observations, experience, or reading. Okay, so those are two kind of typical type of prompts, and I'm going to give you exactly 20 minutes to write an essay to the best of your ability. So that you can kind of pace yourself, I will give you a warning at 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and 1 minute, and then we'll stop, and then we will begin the direct instruction part of the class. So, pull out a fresh piece of paper. Grab your pen. Okay, I will set my timer for 20 minutes, so give it your best. No help, no questions. You're all on your own. We're kind of simulating a testing environment. All right, ready? Go. 5 minutes remaining. Three minutes. One minute. Okay, stop. That was 20 minutes. Shake out your tired writing hand. Take a deep breath. How do you feel? Just curious. How many people feel, yes, I totally aced this thing. I love my essay. Well, you could leave. No. How many of you feel kind of the opposite, like, ugh, if that's something I might have to do, I could learn a few things here. Anyone feeling? Yes, if you happen to go into the profession of either sales or teaching, you can note that it's basically the same job. It's a hurt and rescue operation. If your students or your customers feel like they don't have what you can provide and they need that because they're hurting, then they'll be very happy to part with their time and or attention, and it works all better. So if you should, by some misfortune, become a teacher someday, remember this advice, Amy. Hurt your students first. And then they become so much more teachable. But I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was just trying to create a little perspective that we could build on here. For how many of you, that was a very long 20 minutes? For how many of you was that a very short 20 minutes? See, this is a useful technique in life because, you know, Grant, if you're ever sitting around and the time is just dragging and you're kind of bored and you've got nothing better to do, just whip out some paper or your computer and type an essay. And that 20 minutes just go by like that, doesn't it? Somehow I doubt that any of us would be jumping to do that. So it's interesting. We're talking about university level writing. And have any of you taken any college or university level classes? Okay, so you've got a little bit of experience and you can let me know if the things that I teach over the course of these weeks corresponds with or contradicts in some cases, or maybe reinforces what you've already experienced there. But probably the first thing that many people notice when they walk into a university class is that they have to take notes. Sometimes students have good instruction and practice during the high school years, and they walk in, yes, I know how to do this. And unfortunately, other people don't have nearly as much instruction or practice, and so they may flounder around a little bit. So taking notes, one thing. Another thing, of course, would be the type of writing that we just did, which is generally called an essay. But then, in addition to that, there are other types of writing that you would need to do in a university setting. One of those is not nearly so romantic as writing an essay. It's more writing a summary. So teachers will often want you to take a piece and write a précis. Have you ever heard that word before? Mm-mm. No. Precis. Just remember, when you have to do this, you will pray that you can see all the things the teacher wants you to put in. So it's a précis, meaning it's the salient points, the interesting, important, relevant, meaningful things. Did you read with good comprehension? Are you able to re-express these thoughts? So it's a summary type of activity. Of course, you head into the world of research, which is kind of like that, only now you have multiple sources of information to have to deal with. And that goes right with the problem of your citations and documentation. You've had to do that, I'm sure, and there are different systems for doing citation and documentation. So we want to take a look at that, and we will, as we go through, consider some other tasks that you may bump into in the years in which you experience college or university level writing tasks. Then, of course, you leave school and you go off into what? The real world? whatever that means. And then who knows what you'll do. You may work and have to write things as a part of the job you get, or maybe you will get inspired to expound on something that you know about and become a blogger. That's possible too. Oh, or maybe you will enjoy teaching and passing on some of those things that you have learned to your children or other people's children. So we'll start out, though, with kind of the simple question, what is an essay? We use the word. You've heard it, I've used it, you've probably used it. And if you ask people, what's an essay? Most of the time they say, something you don't want to do. But, of course, there are better definitions than that. How would you define an essay? Millie? Just like out of the blue, hit you with it. Someone says, an essay. What is it? How would you explain?
Writing down your thoughts or opinions on a prompt or thought.
Okay, excellent. Writing down your thoughts or opinions on a prompt or a thought. Is that what you said? Okay, yeah, that's a very good definition. If you look in the dictionary, it generally says a short written composition, generally expressing the ideas, belief, or opinion of the writer. And of course, we know that an opinion without facts to support it, well, that's just obnoxious. So we need to learn how to collect up, organize, and represent facts, but at the same time, we need to develop the skill of thinking about those facts so that when called for, we can add that content in as well. There's kind of two ways to do it. Collect up a bunch of facts and then decide, okay, what can I think about this? Another way would be to say, I have an opinion. Can I find some supporting evidence or research to support that opinion? And so people will go both ways. So I'd like to go over some different categories of essays. So pull out a fresh sheet of paper and we'll take a look at a few. Now, there are different lists of types of essays, so it's a very good chance that you have taken or you may take a class where someone attempts to give you a list similar to this one. And if it's different, that doesn't mean I'm right and they're wrong, or they're wrong and I'm right. Oh wait, I just said that the same way. I guess I'm always going to be right. No, I mean, it could mean that I'm wrong and they're right, or they're right and I'm wrong, or it could just be different. So the first type of writing is expository. And this is from as most words we encounter have roots from somewhere. This particular root is Latin, and it's ex and posit. Posit means to place, right? I place something. So when you exposit, you place out something for someone to learn about. So essentially in expository writing, this is when you teach or explain something presumably that you know about. You know about it because you researched it and learned, or you have life experience, or you have therein a combination. In my life, professionally, most of my writing falls into this category. The great thing about expository writing for me is I mostly have a friendly audience. I write for people who are already wanting to learn what I can teach or explain to them. So I wrote once an article on why students should use pen instead of pencil. I wasn't really arguing so much as I was just explaining all the reasons as to why it was a better choice. So this idea of expository, that's kind of, in your simplest form, it's like a report. But the question is, where do you get the information, and then how do you present it? Another type of writing would be descriptive. And that's where you paint a picture. You create pictures in the mind of the reader, images. And sometimes that's the lasting feeling. You've read the whole thing, and what remains isn't necessarily a strong conviction, but a fascinating or interesting or sometimes disturbing or maybe elevating image. We're going to use a short essay by one of my favorite authors, G.K. Chesterton, called On Lying in Bed. And it's all about the great benefits of lying in bed. Oddly, it seems that he feels that lying in bed has value only if you do so because you want to. If you are sick or tired, then it doesn't have the same benefit. But if you lie in bed just because you want to, then this has potential. I think every teenager secretly wants to read this essay. And I don't remember a whole lot else about it, except the image. And Chesterton was a bit corpulent. So you think of this very large man just lying in bed. And then he goes on to talk about affixing a piece of chalk to a long stick. And then you could lie in bed and draw pictures on the ceiling. And wouldn't that be the greatest of all things? And I'm not sure the parents would appreciate that particular aspect of the idea. But the thing that I came away with reading it was mostly the images. And so oftentimes you get that type of description. Then you have what is common in the world of high school and college writing exercises, argumentative essays. I think they do this to teenagers because pretty much everyone is aware that teenagers just love to argue. You're naturally good at it. So why not help you become better? Now, this, though, is an exercise, and very much the essay you just wrote on this prompt was that. They were asking you. In fact, they specifically said, do you agree or disagree? Support this, and it's an argument, right? So this is essentially when you have some kind of thesis. How would you define a thesis, Allie? We use that. It's another word we use a lot, but what does it mean? How would you define it?
You're defending your beliefs.
Okay. Want to add to that, Lisa? No? Anybody? Amy? Yes.
A statement that you're trying to prove or show is true or false?
There you go. Yeah, something you're trying to prove. Something you're trying to prove. And so to prove it, you have to do more than just say it again and again and again. You have to come up with what? Yes, Drayton.
Facts and information.
Okay, so you want to support it with facts. And where do you get those facts from?
Sources?
Sources? Well, in this case, you really couldn't go get any sources because it was a in-class, on-demand, write this now with you and your brain and whatever you happen to carry around in it. But what do you look for in your mind? You look for, yes?
Reasoning.
Okay, good. Reasoning. And how would you define reasoning, Zane?
Thinking of a logical explanation that would prove your point.
There you go. Basically, reasoning is when you use logic. So if you study logic, you're likely to be better off when you go to argue things than if you don't. It's funny how we see sometimes in the public forum, people have a strong opinion, they argue, but they are lacking much in the area of reasoning and logic. And of course, for some of us, that can be kind of disturbing. All right, what else? You got reasoning, you also could use. Think about how you went about writing that essay at the very beginning. And so you were looking for logic and reasoning. You were also thinking what? Drayton.
I was going to say examples.
There you go. Yeah, they always want you to use examples from real life, from your life, or from reading that you've done as well. And that goes right in with evidence, right? So they'll usually say reasoning, examples, evidence, and that's how you prove your thesis. If it's just you and your brain and whatever you happen to carry around in it, you're limited to your memory. But if it's evidence that you can go and collect up from an external source, then you can use research and do citations, and that works a little bit better, doesn't it? How many of you would have liked to have access to the internet for a half an hour before writing this paper this morning? Wouldn't that have been convenient? Yeah, then you would have been able to get a lot more information to support your thoughts on that. Okay, so argumentative is when you have something to prove and then you try to do so. This is not used terribly much outside of an exercise. What you see more in kind of the real world would be persuasive. Persuasive essays or persuasive writing is when you try to move someone's opinion. And so there's strategy involved in this. Rather than having a thesis and then trying to prove it, you want to be sure that anyone could join in and read what you're speaking about. So the better way is to ask a question. So instead of a thesis, you ask a question. Let me give you an example. Let us say that I write a little piece on reducing traffic deaths in the United States. And so my thesis is the driving age for all 50 of the United States should be a minimum of 18 years old. That's my thesis. And then I go and try to find statistics and arguments and other people, and right? But right up front, I say, driving age should be 18. Who's going to read this? No?
People who already agree with you?
Probably people who are like, oh, okay, well, that makes pretty good sense. Right off the shot. Who's going to throw it in the trash and say, what an idiot?
People under 18.
Yeah, everyone else, right? So one of the dangers of argumentative writing is that you can alienate your reader by having a thesis that they disagree with right up front, and then, okay, there's like, I don't even care, they won't even read it. One of the big differences between writing and public speaking is that in public speaking, you have a captive audience, right? It's kind of fun to go into a room and have many hundreds of people sitting there, and you just think, I've got these people for a whole hour, right? Because they can't really just get up and leave unless they want to be super rude. And if they're in like the middle of a row, in the middle of a room, it's even better. But in writing, you don't have a captive audience. Anyone can either read or not read something you've written. Now, we assume that most teachers do read what students write. So maybe they're forced to read it, but if they disagree with your thesis right off, they're not positively predisposed towards whatever you're going to say. So instead, you ask a question. If I start my paper, recently it has been under public discussion that the driving age in the United States should be raised to 18 years old. Is this a good idea? Okay, now who's going to read this?
Everyone?
Everyone. Why?
Because you didn't just say that you already disagreed with everybody else right off the bat.
Yeah, because people are curious. They read something and they think, I wonder if this person agrees with me or if this person is stupid like everyone else. I mean, we're kind of just naturally curious, right? So we're kind of forced to read and find out whether the author agrees or not with whatever opinion we may or may not have. Now, it's possible we don't have an opinion about something at all. And then we're probably, reading whatever more as, okay, teach me about that. But if it has any bit of controversy or question, then you have persuasive writing as a strategy by asking the question. And then you use that strategy, and so you present your evidence, examples, and evidence and reasoning. And then you do one more important thing, and that would be to refute any opposing views. So you would want to refute. What does that mean, refute? Yes, Zane.
To prove wrong what people might say against you.
Perfect. There you go. So you want to prove wrong an opposing view. So you refute the opposition. And there may be more than one thing that needs to be refuted. But I think some of you are pretty good at this. It's a natural tendency, right? Because you say, now, Mom, what you said is not quite true because of this and this and this and this. And what I said actually is, in case, the facts because of this and this and this and this. And therefore, you should let me go to the mall with my friends tomorrow. You're naturally talented at this type of thing. So these are kind of two sides of one coin, and they have different use, different purpose. But there are then more. The next one would be analytical. Analytical writing. Now, the word analysis in its simplest form, what does that mean? Analysis. A little harder to define. Anybody have a thought? Hunter.
To study it?
Okay, to study something. Anyone want to take that one step further? Noah?
Looking at parts of a thing, what makes up a whole.
Excellent. Yes, so analysis in its simplest literal meaning means to break something into its component parts, right? So break something into its parts and look at them separately. And then after that, you essentially render a judgment about it. You ask, what's the value or significance or impact? And so that's where we get the idea of kind of critical thinking, right? Often in the world of education, you hear people say, we want critical thinking. How do you develop that kind of thing? This is one aspect of it. Probably the simplest analytical writing that you would run into in the world in general today would be a movie review. Have any of you read a movie review? Now, I'm not talking about looking for how many Rotten Tomatoes there are. That's not a movie review. That's just random people ranking something according to their personal preference. A movie review written by an actual professional kind of movie reviewer. Has anyone read one? You have? What kinds of things do they talk about in that?
They describe the different aspects.
Okay, good. And what are some of the aspects in a movie?
Just the violence level, in the.
Violence level,
They
good.
also have family, spiritual, and things that have to do with alcohol and drugs, and kind of categorize things.
Okay, so they'd give it a kind of a review of who it's appropriate for by identifying violence, drugs, profanity, etc. So that'd be one aspect. What else might be included in a movie review? Zane?
The overall plot and the continuity of it.
Okay, so the plot, does it work? Does it keep you on the edge of your seat? Or, the continuity, I like that term, the things connect up. What else, though? There's even more parts to a movie. What else is in a movie? Noah?
Soundtrack and editing.
Sure. Soundtrack, the music, editing quality. If it's like a superhero or a fantasy movie, it's got to have special effects. If it's a period piece, then there may be attention to the details of clothing or costumes, setting, that kind of thing. So there's all sorts of elements that could be identified and could be evaluated, right? And so oftentimes it'll say there's this, and this was really good, this was kind of weak, this was the strong point, and in the end, I put it all back together and recommend you see this movie. It's worth your time and money, or don't bother, it's not worth your time and money, and then you can use your time and money better because you have been enlightened by the movie review. Do you see? So there's not as many aspects to an essay, but there are things that you can look at in terms of how did this person write this story, or this book, or this article, or this essay. One of the tricks they like you to do in many college classes, I don't know, Allie, maybe you've done this, is you have to write an essay about how someone else wrote their essay. Have you ever had to do that? You have? Then, of course, there's a couple more. One of those is narrative. What is a narrative? Amy?
Tells a story.
Story, yes. So why might it be important to have good story skills in writing? What do stories do for you? Noah?
They can help illustrate a point or provide a type of subtle criticism or persuasion.
I like the way you think there. Yeah, the story can be part of your examples or evidence. But a story is generally more interesting than just fact. Why? What does a story have to have in order for it to kind of catch you, to grab you? See?
Good plot and characters.
Okay, so it's got to have a character or more. Characters, and then some kind of conflict or problem. And then you have what? Solution. There you go. A resolution or a solution. So, lastly, we would have the personal essay. And this has a fairly limited use. This is when you use the word I because it's all about you. If you write an essay about yourself, generally it's because you're applying for a scholarship, or you're applying to a college or university, or possibly you have been specifically asked to write about your experience in a particular assignment. Or maybe you grow up and write blogs. However, I will give you a little heads up. Generally, in academic writing of all sorts, you want to avoid using the word I in your writing, particularly if it comes in this type of expression. I think, I believe, I feel, in my opinion. That kind of qualifies what you're saying and weakens the writing. So when you want to do strong academic writing, don't say, I think, I feel, I believe, or in my opinion, because basically nobody cares what you think, what you feel, or what you believe, or what your opinion is. Instead, you say your opinion as if it were the absolute truth, the facts, right? And so you make an assumption that you can speak authoritatively without having to qualify, in my opinion. Do you see? And that makes it stronger. You think about the real world. People have opinions all the time, but they often write them as though they were the truth, the fact, right? And then the listeners and readers have to discern, okay, is that true? Where's the support? Where's the logic? Or is it maybe just an opinion or an agenda? And so we have to become good listeners and readers, which is one reason that doing a lot of different writing is helpful. So that's a list of several. Now, the ones that are probably most important for you as college students or college-bound students would be the argumentative, because they like to do that as an exercise. Possibly the persuasive. Certainly the analytical. The expository falls kind of in that category of telling what you have learned about something. So that's where you'll probably spend most of your time and where we will spend a lot of our time. I'd like to shift over in the time we have remaining and talk a little bit about note-taking. As I have watched high school and college or university students take notes, I noticed that there are generally three groups of students. One group of students starts listening or reading, and because writing is relatively easy, they can go fast, they may start writing down huge chunks or even whole sentences of what someone says. The problem with that is that almost anyone can talk faster than almost anyone can write. Consequently, if you use that method, you're listening and somebody says something, and so you start writing that whole sentence or a big chunk of it. By the time you've got that done, the speaker is now on the fourth sentence. So you quickly try to write a big chunk of the fourth sentence, and by the time you've got that one done, the speaker is now on the seventh sentence, and by the time you've got that one done, and you do this the whole time, and then what do you have? Noah?
A random third of the talk.
Yeah, kind of big gaps, and it may come out to be kind of random because you're missing logical connections and whatnot. And then, of course, you let those notes sit around and don't do anything with them until right before the test, at which case you've forgotten even more, and it's even harder to put the pieces back together. So that's the danger of trying to write whole sentences or chunks of sentences. Another type of student, which I have observed, doesn't really know at all what to write down. Consequently, or they face this horrible problem, a really interesting presentation that captivates their attention, in which case they forget to write anything down. Either way, what do you end up with? Not much. And that's not going to be terribly helpful when you go to study for your exams or write your papers using information, right? So most people are kind of on these extremes. Then there's a select group of people who have a good sense of how to listen and then how to take notes in a somewhat abbreviated form. So that's where you want to be. So with note-taking, the first thing you want to do is you want to be able to use, you want to have good listening, or if you're taking notes from a source text, you want to have good reading. You want to understand quickly as best you can what you're reading. Now, if it's a technical field, you may have to stop and look up various words and maybe even ask some questions, talk to someone if it's something you're not familiar with. But you want to have good listening and reading. The second thing is you want to choose the ideas. And how would you know whether to write something down or not? You would have to kind of have a sense of what's Zane?
You would have to kind of have a sense of what the important information is and what's more for the flavor of the presentation.
Very good, yes. So you'd want to be able to choose what's important. And if you don't know what's important, you could at least shoot for things that are interesting. Probably the best word would be relevant. What does that word mean, relevant? Amy?
Kind of fits in, goes with what the whole thing's about.
Excellent. Fits in, goes with. Anyone want to add to that? Noah?
Is related to.
Is related, related, pertinent, all those ideas. Good. Because a lot of times people will put things in their writing or speaking that are there to, entertain or amuse or draw you in a little bit, or fill time or fill space. I've actually read a number of papers that you get the feeling someone kind of finished and then they thought, oh no, 200 more words to go. What am I going to stick in here to make it longer, right? In which case you're kind of wishing they hadn't, but nevertheless. So what's relevant? So important, interesting, and relevant. And then, and here's the real trick, is learn to take notes in key words versus, instead of, phrases or clauses, or in worst case scenario, whole sentences. Now, there is one time when you would want to write down an entire sentence or copy an entire sentence or maybe more from a book. What is the one time you would want to do that? Zane?
A quote.
Yes. If you were going to quote or cite this, right? So with sentences, if you use a quote or a citation, and you're going to have a citation, then that's when you might copy a whole sentence. But in general, you want to learn to work with keywords. Now, some of you may have some experience taking notes with keywords. For others of you, this may be a little bit of a new idea. So we're going to start assuming nobody's done this before and show you how this can work. So I have a little article here. Here is a little article which should be of interest to all college, university-bound students on plagiarism. And if you learn nothing else, you might learn how to spell this word. Because it's not commonly used a lot by people, and it is a little odd. But let's read through, and then I'll show you how we can take notes using a keyword outline. So here you go. The first century Roman poet Martial, or Martial, depending how you pronounce your Latin, and there are many opinions about how to pronounce Latin words, and nobody really knows because nobody talked to this guy since he lived in the first century. Martial used the Latin word plagiarus, literally kidnapper, to describe another poet who he claimed had kidnapped some of his verses. In 1620, the term plagiarism entered the English language and is today defined as, quote, presenting work or ideas from another source as your own, with or without consent of the original author, by incorporating it into your work without full acknowledgement. Footnote. Do you see the little one? And you look down below. Why did I have to do that? Eliza?
It's a direct quotation.
It's a direct quotation. And if I didn't do that, I would be guilty of
Plagiarism.
Usually, this is done for personal, social, political, or financial gain. Plagiarism can be divided into three categories: literal, academic, and commercial. Literal plagiarism occurs when a writer copies the exact wording of someone else's prose and does not give credit to the source. Most common among high school and college students, this can undermine one's reputation among faculty and peers and even result in a poor or failing grade. Academic plagiarism occurs when another's original research and/or ideas are represented as one's own. This has more serious consequences and may even result in expulsion or professional censure. Commercial plagiarism, which may occur in journalism, politics, or business, can result in disgrace, termination, or even lawsuits. Today, because of the ubiquity of computers and the internet, plagiarism, literal and academic, is increasingly common. It is tempting, sometimes overwhelmingly so, for students to just cut and paste content for their papers. Most universities provide guidelines to help students understand and avoid plagiarism while emphasizing the importance of proper documentation. Many schools use online plagiarism detection software, which compares a submitted paper with a large database of existing papers. These programs mostly search for frequency of word repetition and text string overlaps. Some even employ stylometry. I never knew that word until just recently. Stylometry, which uses statistics to identify an author's particular usage patterns. Consequently, while a student today can easily copy verbatim from almost anything ever published, modern technology also makes it more likely that the prose kidnapper will be caught. How many of you have had a warning from a teacher or a school or a professor or anybody about this? Yes. So if you haven't, you probably will. And the problem is unfortunately seeming to be very widespread these days. And of course, some students, if they just copy stuff off the internet and then they don't do anything to change it or cite it or anything, and then they get caught, like, you didn't write this, they don't get the idea that there's something wrong with that. A lot of students have the opinion, hey, I'm just using technology. That's what we do, right? But there are many teachers and many schools that still consider it a very serious offense. And a lot of the schools will try to educate you on how to avoid what I'm sure in your case, because you're all such good people, would be accidental plagiarism. Okay, so now we have this little article, and I would like to show you how we work with keywords to create keyword outlines so that we can then study and review the information. So you probably have enough space right on that paper there. And so we like to make, so this is a 3-paragraph piece. So we will use the Roman numeral just to indicate new paragraph. Okay, so we go to the first sentence again. The first century Roman poet Martial used the Latin word plagiaris, depending how you pronounce your Latin, plagiaris, literally kidnapper, to describe another poet who he had claimed kidnapped some of his verses. So we read the sentence again, and then we will choose a maximum of 4 keywords. So with younger children, I usually teach this using 3, but at the upper and adult level, 4 seems to work very well. I wouldn't go more than 4 for this exercise, right? But what words would you choose there in terms of being the words that would help carry or transfer or transmit the meaning here? Allie, what do you like?
We would use Martial. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly.
Martial, yeah.
Plagiaris.
Plagiaris, okay.
And I would say poet.
You would,
Describing another poet.
okay, poet. And then you could have one more if we're going with a limit of 4.
Kidnapped. I mean, well, that's what the other word means. Verses. The verses. He stole his verses.
Well, if he's a poet, he's writing verses. Probably the kidnapped. I mean, that's the interesting, amusing part, do you think? All right, so we'll go with kidnapped. So you can mark on your paper if you like. Otherwise, we will go ahead and transfer those keywords into the first slot of the keyword outline. So now, that's not a word, but it is what?
An abbreviation.
Abbreviation. Here's the good news. We allow 4 whole words, and then abbreviations, numbers, and symbols would be free. So why did I write that? What am I abbreviating there? Millie?
First century.
First century. Okay, so that's free. Then we've got the guy whose name we don't know how to pronounce. Just makes you want to run and look up some of his verses, doesn't it? No, it doesn't. Okay. He used the word plagiaris. Why did I put that in cursive? Leah?
Italicized.
It's italicized. Why is it italicized?
Is Latin?
Yeah, foreign word, right? So I did that, and that'll remind me. And then he was a poet. And some other poets kidnapped his verses. Okay, so that's the first sentence, and it was, 2 lines long, but we got it into a few words. Okay, next one. In 1620, the term plagiarism entered the English language and is today defined as the representation of another author's language, thoughts, ideas, or expression as one owns original work. Okay, again, a fairly long sentence. We get 4 words. There is a freebie. What's that?
1620?
1620, okay. So that's free. That's when they first recorded someone using it in its modern form. Okay, what do you think?
Probably representation.
Okay, representation. Another's. Okay. Hunter, you want to give him a suggestion there?
Ideas?
Ideas, okay. Or because it's saying language, thoughts, ideas, and expressions, and we can't do all of that, what word would be most encompassing of those 4?
Original, maybe? No.
Work.
Yeah, work, maybe.
Thoughts.
Thoughts, although it's not just thoughts, but
Expression.
yeah, language would include all that, right? So thoughts, ideas, expressions. So let's go with language. And then what would be the other one? I think you said it.
Ideas?
Own. Or work.
Original?
Yeah.
I think someone said that, so original. We'll see if it works. We can actually test our outline and see if it works. So this is the definition. And I'll put quotations because it is a definition. Representation, another's, language as original. Okay, so hopefully then those words remind us of this idea. We'll test it out. Okay, last sentence in this first little paragraph. Usually, this is done for personal, social, political, or financial gain. All right, keywords.
Gain?
Gain, okay, there's one, gain. And you could have a few more. And it's not a long sentence, so pick any. What do you like, Aaron?
Personal.
Personal. That's 2. Can I have another one? Yeah.
Social.
Social. Can I have one more if you like?
Financial.
Financial, okay. All right, so that gives us 4. Well, there's only 3 sentences, so we only need 2. Okay. Personal, social, financial gain. And if you're a student in school, why might you be tempted to copy someone else's stuff without giving credit?
You run out of ideas and it can simulate what you're thinking and trying to express.
Right. And you would do that not for financial gain, but you would do it because? Well, you wouldn't. But some people might do it because? Come on.
Personal gain.
And what would that look like when you're in school?
Good grade.
Grades, yes. You would like a better grade because that, I don't know, everybody thinks you should get good grades, right? Yeah, so. Okay, so only 2. Sorry I put the 3, but you can just cross it off in your paper. All right, now let's try the second one. Plagiarism can be divided into 3 categories: literal, academic, and commercial. Keywords? Hunter?
Categories?
Categories, okay. And then it looks like the others are kind of obvious. Drayton?
Literal, academic, and commercial.
There you go. Okay, so categories. Literal, academic, and commercial. All right. Next sentence. Literal plagiarism occurs when a writer copies the exact wording of someone else's prose and does not give credit to the source. Do we need the word literal? Or do we just write it down? If we just wrote these, are we likely to forget what we're talking about?
No.
No. If we needed to, we could maybe use an abbreviation to remind us, right? So this L might go with that literal. So that would be free. What else do you like? What is the essential thing here in literal plagiarism? Drayton?
Copies.
Copies, okay.
Exact wording.
That's what I was thinking, Amy. Yeah, exact wording. Okay, so in literal plagiarism, someone copies the exact wording without giving credit. What's the symbol for no credit? So you can use without the credit. So hopefully that reminds us then, literal plagiarism is someone copies exact wording without giving credit. Okay, what's the next one say? Most common among high school and college students, this can undermine one's reputation among faculty and peers and even result in a poor or failing grade. Keywords?
I would say students.
Students, okay. And it affects their grades as well as their
Reputation.
reputation. All right. And by the way, there's no rule that says you have to have 4. So if you feel maybe in a sentence such as this one, you only need 3, there's no rule that says you have to choose 4. You can use 1 or 2 or 3, 4 being the maximum. So students may experience reputation and grade. Okay, moving on. You with me? Everyone keeping up okay? Academic plagiarism occurs when another's original research and ideas are represented as one's own.
You could use that A for academic.
Excellent, Emma. Good. So we got the A, and that reminds us of the academic. And then what keywords would complete this one? Anybody? Yes, Drayton?
Research ideas represented as own.
Okay, so research ideas represented own.
Yes.
Good. Wow, you're thinking faster. All right, excellent. Let's go ahead and put that. This has more serious consequences and may even result in expulsion or professional censure. What does censure mean? Anyone know? Hunter?
To censor, or so they wouldn't be able to say?
No, it's actually a slightly different word. Censor would be to block out or cut out or make something unavailable. Censure, S-U-R-E, has a different meaning. Allie, do you know this word? It probably means like a official criticism, official warning maybe, or it could be a public criticism. I don't know if you've experienced over the few years you may have been reading or listening to news, but occasionally some high-profile person gets accused of having done this, and oftentimes, in addition to negative publicity, it damages their ability to continue doing research that people will read. Or professional censure might even be an organization would make a statement. You've crossed the line here, right? Professional organization. Okay, so what do you like? Yes?
Consequences.
Consequences,
Expulsion.
expulsion. One more?
Professional.
Professional or
Censor.
censure. You could go with those. All right. Okay. Coming in toward the end. Last sentence in this paragraph. Commercial plagiarism, which may occur in journalism, politics, or business, can result in disgrace, termination, or even lawsuits. Keywords? Zane, what do you like?
Disgrace.
Disgrace, okay, excellent. Yes?
Can we put a C at the start of it?
Sure, you betcha. We'll put a C for commercial there. Good thinking. We got disgrace. You can have a couple more. What do you like? Emma, what do you go with?
Lawsuits?
Lawsuits? And I guess you're either going to have to choose one from journalism, politics, or business, or simply ignore that and just go with termination. What do you think? What would you do, Millie?
Termination.
Go with termination? Okay. And we'll just remember commercial, the non-academic kind of real world stuff. Okay. So. Okay, let's kind of stop there. That's about half the page. And let's test the outline and see if it works. The way we would test the outline is we would go back and say, okay, those are the keywords we wrote down. Why did we write those words? And try to verbally recreate the basic idea. And the nice thing about this is we can check our verbal recreation against the original and see if it makes sense and basically says the same thing, right? So who could start us off without looking at your typed paper, just looking at the keyword outline, who could start us off and make a sentence that kind of approximates the original? I know some of you have done this before. Eliza, you want to give it a shot?
First century Roman marshal, or however that's pronounced, you first used the word plagiarist to describe a poet that had kidnapped his words.
Great. The first century Martial, or however it's pronounced, used the word plagiaris to describe a poet who kidnapped his words. Okay, was hers exactly like the original? No. Do I care? No. Did she say it in a complete sentence? Do I care?
Yes.
Yes. I like complete sentences. It makes sense. Did it approximate the original closely enough? Yeah. So far, so good. Thank you very much, Eliza. All right. Who would like to try the next one here? Emma, I can tell you're dying to do it.
In 1620, quote, plagiarism was described as a representation of someone taking another's original work.
Okay. In 1620, plagiarism was described as a representation of someone taking another's original work. Okay. She didn't use the word language. Is that okay? Sure. And she's not going to quote that in the same way that the writer of this did. Right? Good. Of course, I don't know there were dictionaries back then, but that's when it first came into, we know somebody used the word writing something. And then this dictionary definition is probably a bit more modern. But okay, last one. Allie, okay?
People would use plagiarism for personal, social, and financial gain.
Okay, people would use plagiarism for personal, social, financial gain, or financial gain. Perfect. Okay, did it work? How many words do you think were in that paragraph total? I would guess there's in the zone of 50 to 60. How many did we write down?
12.
12. So that's pretty good. If there were 60 words and we only wrote 12, we're using that pretty efficiently, pretty effectively. All right, let's try the next one, see if this makes sense as well. Who hasn't done one yet? Madison, you want to try the first one of the next paragraph?
The categories of plagiarism include literal, academic, and commercial.
Excellent. Okay, beautiful. Next one. Amy?
Literal plagiarism.
Oh, she got the big L there. See how handy that is? Go ahead.
Literal plagiarism copies exact words without giving credit to the original author.
Okay, excellent. Literal plagiarism copies exact words without giving credit to the original. Okay. Grant?
Plagiarism may affect students' reputations or grades.
Plagiarism may affect students' reputation or grades. Excellent. Very good. Okay. Next one. Millie, you want to give it a shot?
Academic plagiarism can use research ideas represented as one's own.
Okay. Academic plagiarism can present research or ideas represented as one's own. Is that what you said? Close enough. Okay. Good. All right. Emma?
The consequences for academic plagiarism includes expulsion and professional censure.
Good. What does expulsion mean, by the way? Anyone? Amy?
Kicked out.
Yes! You are kicked out of here. Not good for most people. Although if you wanted to just get out and get on with your life, be a shortcut to be kicked out. All right. Okay, then we finish up with the last one here. Who hasn't done one? Drayton? Okay.
Commercial plagiarism leads to disgrace, termination, or lawsuits.
Yes. And honestly, bad, worse, expensive. Okay, now there is a third paragraph, and so that is your homework to practice making a keyword outline of this third paragraph, and then find someone, friend, relative, pet, enemy, mirror. Find someone and try to do the same thing and talk it through once you've made the outline to test and say, okay, did the words I chose help me make sense of the original? Now, this is a first step in the process of becoming an excellent note taker, and that is to learn to work with keywords. In this exercise, we have taken the keywords from every sentence of something. However, if this were 5 pages, would you want to take keywords from every sentence of a 5-page article? Not only would it be not fun, it would be maybe too much information to be useful. So when we move to the next phase, okay, then what we're going to look at is not choosing keywords from every sentence, but just keywords from some of the sentences. Then we're going to move on past that very quickly to a way to organize spatially the keywords that will be even more effective than just putting them in rows and columns, right? So that's how you would deal with taking notes from a source text. But more important, perhaps, is the problem of taking notes from someone speaking. That's harder because with that, you can just stop and go read it again. If someone's speaking, it's just... Although, you could always bring your recording device and you could record your lectures so that if you were confused, you could listen again. Have you ever done that in college class? No? Yes? Mm-hmm. For right now, we're going to try a little experiment. I'm going to just talk for a short time, and I want you to try to do the same thing we did with the printed article, only with what I'm saying. So you might want to take out a fresh paper, depends how much space you have. So this is not going to be a long lecture, because we're almost out of time for today. And I wanted it to be an easy first exercise. So I'm actually going to tell you a joke. So I want you to do the same thing, listen to the sentence, try to choose one or more keywords, and just put them in a row next to numbers. And the great benefit of doing this is you will walk out of here with a joke that you can go tell some innocent, unsuspecting person, like your dad or something, right? Okay, so there's this old pirate, and he's in the tavern talking with the sailors. He has a wooden leg from the knee down. Additionally, instead of his right hand, he has a sharp silver hook, kind of like the character from Peter Pan. And he's got a black patch over his right eye. Got the picture? Wooden leg, silver hook, black patch. One of the sailors says, "Captain, how did you lose your leg?" And the captain says, "Arrgh," because that's what pirates always say. "My leg. Well, I was on the deck of my ship, and we was attacked by a British man of war. And the cannonballs were flying. And one of those cannonballs landed right on my foot. Blew it to smithereens. But I quickly wrapped a tourniquet around the stump. We continued the fight. We took the prize. But I got this to show for it." Everyone doing okay? Another sailor said, "Well, Captain, how did you lose your hand?" And the pirate says, "Arrgh," because that's what pirates always say. "Me hand. We was attacking the fort at St. Kitts. I was holding off 3 British regulars myself with me saber, but I slipped on a banana peel. Lost my balance. One of the enemy sliced off my wrist, but I quickly wrapped a tourniquet around the stump, continued the fight with my dagger, and we took the fort. But I got this to show for it." Finally, another sailor says, "Well, Captain,
How'd you lose your eye?"
how'd you lose your eye?" Pirate says, well, I was on the deck of my ship, and I was looking up at the sails, and a pelican flew right overhead and dropped a little you-know-what right in me eye. And one of the sailors says, Captain, are you saying you lost your eye because of bird droppings? Captain says, well, to tell the truth, that happened the very day after I had got me hook. All right, it's a grisly joke, but most jokes are a bit grisly. In fact, humor is all about benign tragedy. No actual pirate body parts were injured in the making of this joke. Okay, have you got your keyword outline? Who could just read the keywords? I would love to hear one of you just read the keywords. Who's got it? Hunter, you want to do yours?
I had, for the first part, old pirate, then tavern, talking sailors, wooden leg, right, hand, hook, and then patch over eye.
Excellent. All right. Grant, you want to pick it up from there? What did you get for the next part?
I got sailor asked hand. No. Sailor asked leg. Captain attacked cannonball leg, but with the little circle and the cross over it.
Okay, good.
And then sailor asked hand. Captain slipped banana. And then enemy, and then I had the hand with also the little thing on it.
All
and
right.
then just sailor asked eye, and then Captain Pelican pooped eye. That's all I got for that part.
Okay. And then the punchline. That's really important.
That's like kind of this next.
Yeah.
You want me to do that one too?
Yeah.
Okay. I said sailor asked because of pooped, and then Captain happened after hook.
Perfect. All right. Did everyone get something kind of like that? Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, how many lines of keywords did you get? Madison, how many did you get?
7.
7? All right. How about you, Emma?
I got 4.
Only 4, but you kind of squeezed more words onto one line. I can see that. Allie, how many did you get?
9.
9. Lisa?
10.
10? Okay, so you're all kind of in that same zone. So, second bit of homework. Practice this joke using your keyword outline, and then go and try to tell it to someone who's old enough to get it, right? This joke goes completely over the head of 4-year-olds. They need other jokes. But find someone who doesn't know this joke and see if you can tell it after you've practiced it using the keyword outline. All right? Good. So easy, super easy homework this week. Next week, we're going to get into both summarizing and then how to take notes from live talks in an even more efficient way, which allows for greater accuracy as well as speed. And we will get to some fairly long writing assignments by the end of the 12-week period. And so I'm hoping you'll be able to squeeze those into your busy life. Or if we're super fortunate, we'll come up with an assignment that you can do for this class, and then you can also turn it into someone else for real credit. Okay, so let's organize our papers. Okay, so 2 short little homework practice assignments. Number 1, finish the plagiarism, 3rd paragraph outline, practice telling it back to someone else. And then lastly, practice up your joke and find an unsuspecting audience, and see if you can get them to laugh with your joke telling skill. All right? Okay, thank you very much, and we will see you next week. Go have a nice day, what's left of it.